The morning sun, golden and slow, was just beginning to paint the stained glass peacocks in the music room at Graceland. Elvis Presley, restless as ever, sat in his favorite armchair, a cup of lukewarm coffee beside him. It was a typical Memphis morning, warm and heavy with a scent of magnolias, but Elvis felt a familiar itch, not an itch for fame or screaming crowds. Not today. Today it was an itch for something new, something that would spark the fire he sometimes felt flickering low. He'd woken early, as he often did, unable to switch off the constant hum of creativity and thought that buzzed beneath his skin. He'd flipped through channels on the television for a bit, then wandered into the music room, drawn by the quiet promise of the radio. Usually he'd put on some gospel or a classic blues, station music that rooted him, reminded him where he came from. But this morning he just twisted the dial, letting it land wherever it pleased. A local station, WHRK, the heart of Memphis, crackled to life. The DJ, a guy named Mitch, was wrapping up a commercial break with his usual cheerful patter. "All right, Memphis, coming up next. We've got something a little different for you." A new voice, a new sound, sent in by a local talent. Let's give a listen to Whispers in the Alley by Maria Rodriguez. Elvis leaned forward, a half-eaten biscuit forgotten on the saucer next to his coffee. He'd heard countless new artists over the years, sent demos, friends asking him to give a listen. Most of it was fine, competent, but rarely did something truly grab him right from the first note. Then the song began. It started with a simple, haunting guitar melody, plucked with an almost fragile precision. Then a voice. Oh, that voice. It wasn't loud or flashy. It was soft, almost a murmur at first, like the whispers the song title promised. But there was an incredible strength in its vulnerability. It was clear, pure, and held a warmth that seeped right into his bones. The lyrics were simple, telling a story of quiet hopes and dreams in a bustling city, of finding beauty in overlooked places. Elvis closed his eyes, just listening. He felt the music like a physical presence in the room, filling the space, pushing away the usual morning clutter in his mind. The melody built not with a sudden explosion, but with a gentle swell like a tide coming in. The singer's phrasing was impeccable, every word clear, every emotion laid bare, without being dramatic. It was honest, raw, beautiful. He found himself tapping his foot, then nodding his head. A small smile touched his lips. This wasn't just fine. It had that rare quality, that intangible something that made you stop whatever you were doing and just listen. It felt authentic, like a true piece of art created out of passion, not just a desire for fame. When the song ended, Elvis let out a slow breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The DJ, Mitch, came back on, sounding a little breathless himself. "Wow," he said, and Elvis could practically hear him shaking his head in appreciation. That was Whispers in the Alley by Maria Rodriguez. Local girl folks remember that name. Elvis picked up his cold coffee, took a sip, and set it back down. "Maria Rodriguez," he murmured, tasting the name. He picked up the telephone receiver. He knew he had to find out more. This wasn't just another song on the radio. This was a voice that needed to be heard, and he felt deep in his gut that he could help. "Joe," he said into the phone, his voice still a little rough with sleep, but edged with a new kind of energy. "Yeah, it's me. Listen, I just heard a song on WHRK, Whispers in the Alley, by Maria Rodriguez. You know anything about her? Get me some information. Everything you can find." Joe, his longtime assistant, sounded surprised, probably by the early hour and the sudden urgency in Elvis's voice. "Maria Rodriguez, Elvis. Sure thing. I'll get right on it." Elvis hung up, but the melody of Whispers in the Alley still echoed in his mind. It was more than just a song. It was a feeling of hope, of quiet strength. And Elvis, the king of rock and roll, felt a stirring of something he hadn't felt in a while, a true, genuine excitement for someone else's music. He knew in that moment that this was more than just a passing fancy. He needed to do something big, something that would make sure everyone else heard Maria Rodriguez too. The seed of an idea, a rather bold one, began to form in his mind. Maria Rodriguez hummed softly to herself as she carefully arranged a vibrant bouquet of sunflowers and lilies in a tall glass vase. The small flower shop, pedal pushers, smelled of fresh earth and sweet blossoms, a comforting scent that always calmed her nerves. She loved working here. It was a peaceful contrast to the chaotic symphony of notes that constantly played in her head. She wasn't just a florist, she was a musician through and through. Her small apartment above a bustling bakery was crammed with guitars, old notebooks filled with lyrics, and a dusty keyboard. Music wasn't just a hobby, it was her very breath. For years, she'd poured her heart into songwriting, playing in dimly lit coffee shops for sparse crowds, hoping anyone would truly listen. Yesterday had been a small victory, a tiny crack of sunlight in her long tunnel of hopeful obscurity. Mitch, the kind-hearted DJ at WHRK, had finally agreed to play one of her demos. Not during prime time, of course, but late at night, in a segment he called Local Gems. She hadn't even expected to hear it. Probably would be asleep by then. But her best friend Sophia had set her alarm. "It's on, Maria, it's on!" Sophia had shrieked into the phone around 11:30 p.m., making Maria bolt upright in bed. Maria had fumbled with her radio, tuning it just in time to hear the last minute of her song, Whispers in the Alley, float through the airwaves. A shiver had run down her spine, a mix of disbelief and overwhelming joy. It was just a local station, just once, but it was her song out there in the world. Now, as she trimmed a rose stem, she found herself replaying that moment. She wasn't naive. She knew one play on a small station wouldn't make her a star. But it was a start. It meant someone else believed in her enough to share her music. "Mariah, you're dreaming again, aren't you?" chuckled Mrs. Henderson, the shop owner, walking by with a watering can. Maria smiled, a genuine warm smile that lit up her whole face. "Just thinking, Mrs. Henderson, about the radio last night." "Oh, that's right," Sophia told me. "How wonderful, dear. Did anyone call in?" Mrs. Henderson asked, always supportive. Mariah shrugged. "Not that I know of. Probably not. It was pretty late." She tried to sound nonchalant, but a small part of her had hoped even one phone call would have been amazing. She went about her day, filling orders, chatting with customers, but her mind kept drifting back to the music. She was already working on new songs. Her worn guitar always within reach at home. Her latest challenge was a more upbeat tune. Something with a bit more rhythm, but she found herself circling back to the quiet, introspective style of Whispers in the Alley. That song felt like a part of her soul laid bare. It had come to her late one night, walking home through the quiet, lamplit alleys of Memphis, listening to the city's hidden sounds. Later that afternoon, during her lunch break, Maria walked down the street to the small cafe she frequented. She pulled out her beat-up cell phone, scrolling through social media. No new messages, no sudden burst of fame. Of course not, she laughed at herself. Dreams were one thing, reality another. As she sipped her iced tea, she pulled out a small notebook and a pencil, sketching out a few lyrics that had been swirling in her head. A song about resilience, about picking herself up after countless rejections. It was the story of her life, really. She'd faced so many closed doors, so many polite no thank yous, but every time the music pulled her back, made her try again. It was a compulsion she couldn't fight. She had enough saved up for a few more months before she'd have to reconsider things. Maybe take on more shifts or find a second job. The thought was a familiar knot in her stomach. She didn't want to give up, but the practicality of life loomed large. Back at the shop, as closing time approached, the radio, which had been playing softly all day, suddenly caught her attention. Mitch Miller's voice again. "All right, Memphis, we're going to play that track again by popular demand. We've had a truly unprecedented morning here at WHRK, folks, so for those of you who missed it or just want to hear it." Maria froze, her hands full of wrapped flowers. Popular demand. Unprecedented morning. What was he talking about? Her song playing again, less than 24 hours later. And in the afternoon, This was a big deal for a small station. She felt a tingle of excitement, a genuine thrill. She hadn't anticipated. Maybe one or two people had called in. That was still amazing. She turned up the radio, listening to her own voice. Fill the flower shop. A little louder this time. A few customers looked up, curious. Maria smiled shyly. This was it. This was the moment she always dreamed of. Even if it was just for a fleeting second, she had no idea that a pair of famous ears had been listening that morning, ears that belonged to someone who held the power to change her life forever. She had no idea her world was about to be turned upside down by a simple, heartwarming phone call. Elvis Presley couldn't shake it. That song, Whispers in the Alley. It had woven itself into the fabric of his thoughts, a gentle, persistent melody that was far more captivating than any flashy hit on the charts. He'd spent the morning pacing the grounds of Graceland, strumming his guitar half-heartedly, the melody of Maria Rodriguez's song playing on an endless loop in his mind. Joe had called back just as Elvis was finishing his second breakfast. "Okay, Elvis, Maria Rodriguez, she's a local girl, 22, works at a flower shop on Union Avenue. Been trying to get her music out there for a few years. She sends demos to local stations, plays some small gigs, nothing much on her beyond that. No record deal," nodding slowly. "No manager, huh? Good, means she's still pure untouched by the machine." He admired that. It reminded him of his own early days. Just a young man with a guitar and a voice. Before the world ascended. "So, what's the plan, Elvis?" Joe asked, a note of curiosity in his voice. He knew Elvis well enough to recognize that particular spark in his eyes. Elvis walked over to the window, looking out at the endless green lawn. "Plan, Joe, is simple. That girl has talent. Real talent. The kind you can't buy, can't fake. And she needs to be heard." He paused, a grin spreading across his face. "And I'm going to make sure she is." Joe waited. He knew Elvis had a flair for the dramatic, but also a deep, genuine appreciation for music. "I'm going to call WHRK," Elvis announced, turning from the window. "Live on air." Joe's jaw dropped. "Live? Elvis? Are you sure the station will go crazy? The phones will crash your manager. He's going to have a fit." "Let him," Elvis said, his eyes twinkling. "This isn't about me, Joe. This is about Maria Rodriguez. This is about good music. Besides," he added, a mischievous glint in his eye, "won't it be fun?" Joe sighed, but his smile tugged at his lips. When Elvis got an idea like this, there was no stopping him. "All right, Elvis, when do you want to do it?" "Now," Elvis declared. "The sooner the better. Get Mitch Miller on the line. Tell him I want to praise an artist and I want to do it live. No pre-recording, no fancy intros, just me talking about her song." Joe was already reaching for the phone. "This is going to be something else, Elvis." The radio station was indeed in a state of controlled chaos. Mitch Miller, the DJ, almost dropped his coffee when Joe told him. "Elvis Presley?" he stammered, covering the microphone. "Are you serious?" "The Elvis Presley. He's very serious," Mitch, Joe's calm voice replied. "He just heard a song on your station and he wants to talk about it. Live as soon as you can patch him in." Mitch's producer was already yelling instructions. Engineers scrambling. This was a dream come true, a nightmare, and an absolute legend-making moment all at once. Okay, stand by, Mr. Presley." Mitch's voice was barely a whisper. He wiped his sweaty palms on his jeans. This was going to be the biggest moment of his career, maybe of the station's entire history. Back at Graceland, Elvis felt a strange mix of calm and excitement. It wasn't about the attention on him. It was about amplifying a voice he truly believed in. He knew the power of his words, the weight they carried. He wasn't just a singer. He was an icon, a tastemaker. "All right, Elvis, they're ready for you," Joe said, handing him the phone. "Mitch Miller is on the line. He's going to introduce you in about 30 seconds. Elvis took a deep breath, a familiar rush of adrenaline flowing through him, not unlike the feeling before stepping onto a stage. He heard Mitch's voice, amplified slightly through the phone. "He needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, get ready, because we have the king himself, Elvis Presley, on the line." Elvis heard a gasp, then silence, then the distinct sound of a phone line opening. "Hello, Mitch," Elvis said, his voice smooth and deep, carrying that undeniable drawl that was recognized around the globe. He spoke directly into the phone, imagining the millions of ears listening. He felt a profound sense of purpose. This wasn't about selling records. It was about sharing beauty, about lifting someone up. And he knew in his heart that this simple phone call was going to change everything for Maria Rodriguez. For a young, struggling artist, it would be a beacon of hope. For him, it was simply doing the right thing. Mitch Miller felt like he was floating, or maybe he was just lightheaded from sheer disbelief. He'd been working at WHRK for 10 years, spinning records, doing interviews, and cracking jokes. He loved his job, loved the music, but it was usually pretty predictable until today. "Hello, Mitch." The voice came through his headphones, warm and low, unmistakable. It was him, the Elvis Presley. Mitch had cleared his throat, trying to sound professional, despite his pounding heart. "Mr. Presley, sir, it's an absolute honor. I don't even know what to say." He glanced at his producer, Sarah, who was frantically giving him hand signals, mouthing ASKHAM. Anything. Elvis chuckled, a sound that Mitch knew would send shivers down the spines of listeners all over Memphis, and likely beyond. "No need for formalities, Mitch. Just Elvis, and thank you for having me. I appreciate you playing that song this morning." "Maria Rodriguez, Whispers in the Alley, right," Mitch managed to say, quickly regaining his composure. "It's a beautiful track, Mr. Presley. We've had a lot of calls about it today, actually. Since you called, the phones have been ringing off the hook, naturally." He tried to make a joke, but his voice cracked a little. "It is, Mitch, more than beautiful," Elvis said, his voice becoming more serious, more earnest. "I woke up this morning listening to the radio like I do most days, and your station played that song. And I tell you, it stopped me dead in my tracks. I've heard a lot of music in my life, Mitch, a lot of talent. But Maria Rodriguez, she's got something special, something really, truly special." Mitch leaned forward, captivated. He'd never heard Elvis talk about music like this with such genuine, unadulterated passion for an unknown artist. The phone lines at WHRK were indeed blinking furiously. Mitch could see them lighting up like a Christmas tree. The station manager was pacing outside the glass booth, giving him a thumbs up. This was history. "Mr. Presley, that's incredibly high praise," Mitch said, feeling a lump in his throat. "Coming from you, it means the world. I'm sure Maria, wherever she is hearing this right now. And just, well, she must be floored. I hope she is," Elvis said softly, "because she deserves to be heard. I just felt like I had to call in, had to tell people. Don't just listen to the big names, folks. Don't just listen to what's popular. Sometimes the most beautiful music comes from unexpected places, from quiet corners, from someone just pouring their heart out." He paused, and Mitch waited, holding his breath. He glanced at Sarah, who was openly weeping. He felt a tear trickle down his own cheek. It wasn't just a celebrity endorsement. It was a heartfelt plea, a genuine act of support from a legend. It was raw, authentic, and utterly moving. "Thank you, Mr. Presley," Mitch finally managed to stammer. "Thank you so much for that incredible call. That means more than you know." "My pleasure, Mitch," Elvis replied, his voice still warm. "You play that song again, you hear?" "You bet we will, Mr. Presley. We're gonna play it all day," Mitch promised, his voice cracking with emotion. Then, with a gentle click, Elvis was gone from the line. Mitch pulled off his headphones, staring blankly at the mixing board. The phone lines were still glowing red, the emergency line even blinking. The office was buzzing. Sarah was on the phone. Likely with every news outlet in Memphis. He took a deep breath, then leaned into the microphone. "Well, Memphis, he said, his voice still trembling slightly. You just heard history. The king has spoken, and he spoke about a local girl, Maria Rodriguez. So, by order of Elvis Presley himself, and because it's a darn good song, we're going to play it again, and again, and again for Maria. He queued up Whispers in the Alley, pressing play with a reverence he'd never felt for a track before. The first delicate guitar notes filled the studio, and Mitch knew with absolute certainty that Maria Rodriguez's life had just changed forever. Maria was wiping down the counter at pedal pushers, humming along to the background music from work, when Mitch Miller's voice, suddenly more excited than usual, cut through the afternoon quiet. All right. Memphis, you just heard Whispers in the Alley by the incredibly talented Maria Rodriguez. And folks, I'm about to do something I never thought I'd do in my entire career. Maria paused, a sponget hen, and this build up her heart started to beat a little faster. We have a very special caller on the line, Mitch continued, his voice barely containing his excitement, someone who heard Maria's song this morning and felt compelled to reach out. He needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, get ready, because we have the king himself, Elvis Presley. The sponge slipped from Maria's fingers and landed with a wet thud on the floor. Her breath hitched. Elvis Presley, on the radio now, about her song. It couldn't be. Her mind scrambled, trying to process the words, but they seemed too big, too impossible. Then the voice, deep, warm, unmistakable. Hello, Mitch. Just Elvis, and thank you for having me. I appreciate you playing that song this morning. Maria's hands flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. It was him. It was really him. She felt a shiver run through her entire body. A sensation like cold water and hot electricity all at once. That song, Elvis's voice filled the shop, making the flowers sing to vibrates. I've heard a lot of music in my life, Mitch, a lot of talent, but Maria Rodriguez, she's got something special, something really truly special. Tears sprang to Maria's eyes, blurring her vision. She gripped the edge of the counter, feeling dizzy. He was talking about her. King of rock and roll, the legend, the man whose songs had soundtracked generations, was praising her quiet, hopeful melody. That voice, he continued, it's pure. It's got soul. And those lyrics, Whispers in the Alley, they paint a picture. They made me feel something, Mitch, and that's what good music is supposed to do. Isn't it? It's supposed to touch you, to move you. She buried her face in her hands, silent sobs shaking her shoulders. Years of struggle, of doubt, of pouring her soul into songs that often felt unheard, it all washed over her in a wave of emotion. And now the highest praise imaginable from the one person who could truly understand what it meant to create music that moved people. Mrs. Henderson, who had been watering plants in the back, rushed forward, seeing Maria on the floor. Maria, what's wrong, dear? Are you all right? Maria just shook her head, unable to speak, pointing vaguely at the radio, which was still broadcasting Elvis's powerful supportive words. So, to Maria Rodriguez, wherever you are. Elvis's voice resonated through the speaker, as if speaking directly to her. Keep singing, keep writing. You have a gift. Don't ever stop. And to everyone out there listening, go find her song. Listen to it. Support artists like Maria. They're the future of music. Mrs. Henderson finally heard the full context, her jaw dropping. Her eyes, wide with astonishment, looked from the radio to Maria, who was now openly weeping, tears streaming down her face. My goodness, Maria, do you hear that? It's Elvis. He's talking about you. Maria could only nod, tears of joy and disbelief blurring the shop around her. She was crying so hard she could barely breathe, but it was the most beautiful, most relieving cry of her life. Then the phone started ringing and ringing and ringing. The shop phone, her cell phone in her pocket, Mrs. Henderson's personal line. They all seemed to erupt at once. The first call Maria answered was from Sophia, who was practically screaming into the phone. Maria, Didyu. Hear that? It's Elvis. Elvis Presley. He loves your song. OHMY, God. Your life is changing. Right now, W. Maria could only manage a choked, "I know, Sophia, I know," before bursting into fresh tears. Within minutes, people started showing up at the flower shop. Neighbors, curious passersby, even a few local reporters who had somehow heard the news already. They peeked in, wanting to see the Maria Rodriguez that Elvis had just declared the future of music. Maria felt completely exposed, overwhelmed, and yet paradoxically utterly seen. Her small, quiet world had just been shattered, not by an earthquake, but by a single powerful voice of kindness and admiration. She knew without a shadow of a doubt that nothing would ever be the same again. Her dreams, once whispered in the dark, had just been shouted from the rooftops by the king himself. The news spread like wildfire, faster than any music ever had before the age of instant information. Elvis praises unknown local artist live on radio. The headlines screamed from every newspaper, every news channel. WHRK, a relatively small local station, became the epicenter of a media frenzy. Mitch Miller, the humble DJ, was suddenly the most famous person in Memphis, giving interviews, replaying the legendary call. Maria Rodriguez, the florist from Pedal Pushers, became an overnight sensation. Her name, once a whisper, was now on everyone's lips. Whispers in the Alley was no longer just a local gem. It was a national phenomenon. Record labels who had ignored her demos for years were suddenly desperate to sign her. Managers who wouldn't return her calls were now hounding her. Maria herself was in a daze. The day after Elvis's call was a blur of phone calls, flowers from well-wishers, and journalists camped outside her apartment building. Sophia had practically moved in, acting as her unofficial gatekeeper and biggest cheerleader. "Maria, this is incredible," Sophia exclaimed, waving a newspaper with Maria's face on the front page. "You're famous. Elvis Presley made you famous." Maria smiled faintly, feeling a mix of elation and exhaustion. "It's a lot, Sophia. I never imagined any of this." She felt like she was living in a dream, one she was terrified of waking up from. The song itself had exploded. Thanks to Elvis's endorsement, Whispers in the Alley was being requested on radio stations across the country. Music streaming services saw a massive surge in listens. People genuinely loved the song, its gentle beauty a welcome change from the louder, more commercial tracks. Elvis hadn't just given her fame, he had given her a platform for her art to truly connect. Back at Graceland, Elvis was watching it all unfold with a quiet satisfaction. Joe kept him updated. "Papers are going wild, Elvis. Everyone's talking about it. Her song is charting on Billboard's Hot Country list, and it's not even country." Elvis chuckled. "Good, that's good. She deserves it." His own team, of course, had been in a minor uproar initially. His manager had indeed had a fit, as Joe predicted, worried about the unplanned publicity stunt. But even he couldn't deny the positive impact. Elvis had demonstrated his continuing relevance, his ear for talent, and his unparalleled power to influence. Plus, it showed a side of him the public didn't always see: the humble music lover, the true artist. It wasn't about his image, it was about Maria. He found himself wondering about her. How was she handling it? Was she overwhelmed? He hoped she was holding on to her essence, that quiet, pure voice that had moved him so deeply. He listened to Whispers in the Alley, again played on a national radio station this time. It sounded even better now, imbued with the magic of what had happened. He knew his words had been powerful, but he hadn't anticipated the sheer velocity of the reaction. "Elvis, there are a lot of rumors flying around," Joe said one afternoon, looking through a stack of fan mail. "People are speculating you're going to sign her to your own label, that you're going to produce her next album." Elvis just smiled. Let him speculate. Doesn't mean it's true. He wasn't ruling it out, but he also didn't want to overshadow Maria. He wanted her to find her own path, to bloom on her own terms. His intention had been to open the door, not to walk through it for her. Still, the thought lingered. He had praised her on the air. Should he do more? Was a public endorsement enough, or did he owe her a more personal connection? He was a man who acted on instinct, and his instinct told him there was still something more. He wanted to meet her, to tell her face to face what her music meant to him, to see the person behind that extraordinary voice. He imagined her, perhaps still working at the flower shop, surrounded by blossoms. Her face probably still etched with surprise. Pictured her picking up a guitar, her fingers dancing over the strings, pouring her soul into new melodies. The thought brought a warmth to his chest. The media continued to hound Maria, trying to get every detail of her life story. They asked her if she had spoken to Elvis, if he had reached out. Maria, true to her humble nature, simply said no. She hadn't, but that his words were the greatest gift she could ever receive. Elvis read one of her interviews in the Memphis newspaper. She sounded grounded, grateful, and still very much herself. That pleased him. It showed she wouldn't be easily swayed by the sudden rush of fame. A new idea began to form in his mind. Something more direct, more personal. He hadn't just wanted to hear her music on the radio. He wanted to witness it live. He wanted to feel that connection in person. And maybe, just maybe, offer her some words of wisdom, artist to artist. The seeds of a meeting were planted slowly but surely in the fertile ground of his admiration. Maria's life was a whirlwind. The flower shop was now packed with fans, wanting to catch a glimpse of Elvis's new favorite artist, buying flowers they didn't need just to say hello. She felt like she was constantly floating above her own body, watching this incredible, unbelievable story unfold. She had signed with a small, independent record label, not one of the majors, but a team that truly understood her music and promised to let her keep her artistic integrity. They had wasted no time. Whispers in the Alley was now being officially released as a single with plans for an album. Her first live performance since the call was set for a small, historic theater in downtown Memphis, a venue she'd only dreamed of playing. It was a benefit concert for a local music education program, and she was listed as the special guest alongside a few established Memphis blues musicians. The tickets had sold out in minutes. Maria was a bundle of nerves. "What if I mess up, Sophia?" she fretted to her friend as she tuned her acoustic guitar begged. "What if people are expecting, I don't know, a spectacle?" Sophia squeezed her shoulder. "They're expecting you, Maria?" The one Elvis heard, the one with the amazing voice. "Just sing from your heart, like you always do." What Maria didn't know was that a discreet black Cadillac with tinted windows had pulled up outside the theater a few minutes earlier. Inside sat Elvis Presley, wearing a simple hat and sunglasses, accompanied by Joe and a couple of his security detail. "You sure you want to do this, Elvis?" Joe asked, a hint of concern in his voice. "The place is packed." "I want to hear her, Joe," Elvis said simply, his gaze fixed on the theater entrance. "I want to hear that voice live. See if it's as pure as it sounded on the radio." He felt a strange mixture of anticipation and protectiveness. He hadn't just endorsed her. He felt a certain responsibility. They slipped in through a side entrance, taking seats in a private box tucked away in the shadows, almost invisible to the main audience. Elvis settled in feeling a rare sense of anonymity. He just wanted to be a listener. The concert began with a few blues acts warming up the crowd. Then the MC announced her. "And now, ladies and gentlemen, the artist you've all been waiting for, the voice that captured the king's heart, Maria Rodriguez." Maria walked onto the stage, small and a little shy in the bright spotlights. Clutching her guitar, she looked nervous but determined. A roar of applause erupted, a wave of support. Maria took a deep breath, adjusted the microphone, and began to play. The first notes of Whispers in the Alley filled the theater, acoustic and raw. Her voice, live and unfiltered, was even more captivating than on the radio. It soared and dipped, rich with emotion, carrying every word directly to the hearts of the audience. Elvis leaned forward, completely engrossed. He saw the subtle nuances, the way her eyes closed on certain notes, the slight tremble in her hands that showed both vulnerability and strength. She wasn't trying to be anyone else. She was just Maria. He noticed the crowd's reaction, hushed silence during the softer parts, then bursts of spontaneous applause after certain phrases. He saw people wiping away tears. Maria had that rare ability to connect, to make the listener feel like she was singing just for them. When she finished, the theater erupted in a standing ovation. Maria bowed, genuine surprise and gratitude on her face. She looked truly overwhelmed, but also radiantly happy. She then played a new song, one with a bit more energy, shooting her versatility, but still retaining that honest lyrical style. Elvis nodded in approval. She was growing, evolving, but staying true to herself. As the concert ended and people began to shuffle out, Elvis remained in the shadows of the box, watching Maria as she humbly greeted a few fans backstage. Her smile weary but genuine, he felt a profound sense of satisfaction. "She's phenomenal," Elvis Joe whispered, equally impressed. "She is," Elvis agreed, a thoughtful look on his face. He watched her for a few more moments, the way she held herself, the light in her eyes. This wasn't just a chance encounter. It confirmed something deep within him. He had opened a door for her, but she was walking through it with grace and undeniable talent. He knew then that a public endorsement wasn't enough. He needed to meet her, to offer a more personal kind of encouragement, perhaps even mentorship. He had to tell her face to face what a truly remarkable artist she was. The time for subtle support was over. It was time for a direct connection. Maria was exhausted but exhilarated. The benefit concert had been a roaring success. Her manager, a sharp, kind woman named Evelyn, who had taken her under her wing, was beaming. "Maria, you were absolutely brilliant. The reviews are already pouring in. Everyone loves you." Maria just laughed. A giddy, tired sound. "It feels like a dream, Evelyn. I keep waiting to wake up." Well, pinch yourself. "And speaking of real, I have some news, big news." Evelyn's voice dropped, becoming a little more serious. "I got a call this morning from Graceland." Maria's heart leaped into her throat. "Graceland? Graceland?" she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. Who called?" "Joe Elvis, Presley's assistant," Evelyn said, watching Maria's reaction closely. "He said Mr. Presley was at the concert last night, incognito, of course, and he was incredibly impressed. Said your live performance confirmed everything he felt about your music." Maria felt a blush creep up her neck. He had been there, watching her. The thought was both terrifying and incredibly flattering. The words sounded alien, unreal, coming from her own mouth. This was beyond anything she had ever dared to imagine. It was one thing to be praised on the radio. It was another entirely to be invited into the king's private sanctuary. The man was a living legend, a phenomenon. She was just Maria the florist who sang. "When?" she finally managed to ask. "Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, Evelyn said. "I've already cleared your schedule. I'll drive you there myself. We'll pick out something nice for you to wear, something that still feels like you." The rest of the day was a blur of frantic preparation and nervous anticipation. Maria couldn't focus on anything else. She called Sophia, who shrieked so loudly Maria had to hold the phone away from her ear. "You're going to Graceland. Maria, this is insane. This is the most incredible thing that has ever happened." Maria tried to practice what she would say. "Thank you for the kind words, Mr. Presley. No, too formal. It's an honor, Elvis." She paced her small apartment, humming nervous tunes, clutching her guitar as if for comfort. She polished her shoes, tried on 3 different outfits, and finally settled on a simple, elegant dress that felt comfortable and genuine. She spent the night tossing and turning, sleep impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Elvis's face, heard his voice. She thought about his songs, the way they had shaped music, the way he had captivated the world. And now this man, this icon, was inviting her to his home. As the sun rose the next morning, painting the sky with soft hues of orange and pink, Maria felt a sense of calm settle over her, mixed with the intense butterflies in her stomach. This wasn't just a meeting. It was a pilgrimage. It was a chance to thank the man who had changed her life with a single spontaneous act of kindness. Evelyn arrived promptly at 9:30 a.m., dressed smartly. "Ready, superstar?" she asked gently, seeing Maria's pale but determined face. Maria took a deep breath. "As I'll ever be." The car ride to Graceland felt like it lasted both 5 minutes and an eternity. As they turned onto Elvis Presley Boulevard and the iconic gates of Graceland came into view, Maria's heart pounded. The mansion stood grand and quiet, a monument to a legend. This was it. This was where the magic happened. And she, Maria Rodriguez, was about to step inside. The young woman who sang Whispers in the Alley was about to meet the king in his castle. The gates of Graceland swung open silently, revealing a long, winding driveway. Maria, seated beside Evelyn, felt her breath catch in her throat. The mansion, even larger and more imposing than in photographs, stood gleaming in the morning sun. It felt like stepping into a dream, or a very famous history book. A security guard, polite and unassuming, met them at the entrance. "Welcome, Miss Rodriguez. Mr. Presley is expecting you." Inside, the house was surprisingly warm and inviting, despite its grand scale. It wasn't a museum. It was clearly a home filled with personal touches, from the vibrant colors to the comfortable furniture. Maria found herself admiring a lamp, then a piece of art. Trying to calm her racing heart, Joe, Elvis's assistant, met them in the foyer. He offered a kind smile. "Maria, Evelyn, welcome. Elvis is just finishing up some business. He'll be with you in a moment. Please, make yourselves comfortable in the living room." Maria walked into the famous living room, sunlight streaming through the windows, illuminating the plush white sofas and the majestic stained glass peacocks. She almost reached out to touch the grand piano, but stopped herself. It all felt so surreal. A few minutes later, a voice, deeper and more resonant than on the radio, filled the room. "Maria Rodriguez, it's wonderful to finally meet you." Maria turned, and there he was, Elvis Presley, not the flashy stage performer, but a man dressed simply in dark slacks and an open-collared shirt, his hair perfectly coiffed, his eyes warm and crinkling at the corners as he smiled. He was taller than she expected, and carried himself with an easy grace. He walked toward her, extending a hand. Maria felt a rush of heat to her face, her hand trembling slightly as she shook his. His grip was firm, surprisingly gentle. "Mr. Presley," she managed. "Thank you for inviting me. Please, call me Elvis," he said, his smile widening. "And the honor is all mine, Maria. Your music, it truly moved me. I had to hear it live, and then I knew I just had to meet the person behind it." He gestured for her to sit on the sofa, taking a seat opposite her. Evelyn and Joe quietly settled into chairs nearby. "Your song, Whispers in the Alley, it's remarkable," Elvis continued, his eyes earnest. "There's a pureness to it, a honesty that's hard to find these days. Where did you get that melody?" Maria felt herself relax, slightly drawn in by his genuine interest. "It just came to me, Elvis, walking home one night, through the quiet alleys of Memphis. I heard the sounds of the city, but felt a quiet hope beneath it all. It just poured out." Elvis nodded slowly. "That's how it works, isn't it? When it's real, it just flows. You can't force it." He leaned forward. "You've got a gift, Maria, a real gift. And that voice that's got a raw beauty to it." He spent the next hour talking to her about music, about songwriting, about the challenges and joys of being an artist. He shared anecdotes from his own early days, the struggles, the rejections, the moments of pure magic on stage. He gave her advice on staying true to herself, on navigating the sudden fame, on finding her own path in a world that would suddenly have a lot of opinions about her. "The most important thing," he said, his gaze steady, "is to never lose that core, that truth in your music. That's what people connected with. Don't let anyone change that." Maria listened, mesmerized, absorbing every word. It wasn't just advice, it was wisdom, born from decades of experience, at the very pinnacle of the music world. He wasn't talking down to her. He was talking to her as a peer, artist to artist. "You know," Elvis said after a while, a mischievous glint in his eye, "I heard you played a new song at the concert last night. You wouldn't happen to have your guitar with you, would you?" Maria's eyes widened. "Oh yes, Evelyn brought it. It's in the car." "Go get it, Evelyn, please," Elvis said with a smile. "I'd love to hear it right here, if you're willing, Maria." Maria's heart fluttered with excitement, and a healthy dose of terror playing for Elvis Presley in his own living room. This was beyond any dream, but she couldn't refuse. This was the moment. She just hoped her fingers wouldn't completely turn to jelly. Evelyn returned with her guitar, and Maria took it, settling back onto the sofa. She took a deep breath, looked at Elvis, who was watching her with an encouraging smile, and began to play. Maria's fingers, though still a little shaky, found the familiar chords of her new song. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the music flow through her, channeling the nervous energy into the melody. Her voice filled the Graceland living room clearer and more confident now, singing about resilience and hope, a theme that suddenly felt incredibly personal. Elvis listened, his head tilted slightly, a thoughtful expression on his face. He nodded along, sometimes tapping his foot softly. When Maria finished, a gentle quiet filled the room, broken only by the faint chirping of birds outside. Then Elvis clapped a slow, appreciative applause. "Maria," he said, his voice soft, "that was truly beautiful, even more so here. In this room, really special." Maria's eyes welled up again, tears of gratitude this time. "Thank you, Elvis, that means everything." They talked for another hour about her future plans, about the music industry. Elvis offered to connect her with some trusted people, not to control her career, but to ensure she had good guidance. He stressed the importance of staying true to her Memphis roots, to the authenticity that defined her sound. "This sudden fame, it can be a lot," Elvis advised her, his voice gentle but firm. "People will want a piece of you. They'll try to change you. Don't let them hold on to what makes you, Maria. That's the real magic." He spoke from experience, from the heart. As the meeting drew to a close, Maria felt a profound sense of peace and inspiration. It wasn't just that Elvis Presley had noticed her, it was that he had truly seen her. The artist, the dreamer, the person behind the music. He had given her not just a boost, but a foundational belief in herself. "Thank you," Elvis, Maria said, standing to leave, her voice thick with emotion. "For everything, for calling the radio, for inviting me here, for your advice. You've changed my life in a way I can never fully express." Elvis rose, a warm smile on his face. "Just doing my part, Maria. Good music deserves to be heard. And you're the kind of artist that makes me excited about music again." He extended his hand, and this time Maria's handshake was firm, confident. "Keep that light shining, Maria. I'll be listening." As Evelyn drove Maria away from Graceland, Maria looked back at the iconic mansion, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. The fear and disbelief were still there, but now they were overshadowed by a soaring sense of purpose. In the months that followed, Maria Rodriguez's career skyrocketed. Whispers in the Alley became a national hit, played on radios everywhere. Her album, released a few months later, received critical acclaim. She toured, played too, sold out crowds, and her music touched millions of people just as Elvis had predicted. She remained grounded, living modestly, still finding inspiration in the quiet corners of Memphis. She never forgot where she came from, or the unexpected act of kindness that launched her dreams. She sometimes saw Elvis's name in the papers, his concerts, his own continuing legend. She never directly collaborated with him. He had given her the push, then stepped back, allowing her to find her own wings. But they shared a bond, an unspoken understanding forged in a single spontaneous phone call. One evening, Maria stood on a grand stage bathed in spotlights, playing to a sea of faces. She introduced her final song. "This next song," she said, her voice clear and strong, "is for someone who heard a whisper and turned it into a roar. someone who believed in me when very few did. He reminded me what music is truly about, connecting heart to heart. She then launched into Whispers in the Alley, her voice richer, more powerful, yet still retaining that original haunting purity. Crowds sang along their voices, a testament to the song's widespread appeal. Maria closed her eyes for a moment, imagining Elvis somewhere listening, maybe smiling. She was Maria Rodriguez, an artist who had found her voice, not just through talent and hard work, but through the unwavering support of a legend. The king had called, and in doing so had gifted the world a new queen of quiet, beautiful melodies. And the music, heartfelt and true, played on a testament to the enduring power of a kind word and a belief in the magic of a song